Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Tuesday. Seriously? Did I really have to think about that? Oh, it's not a show if I'm not thinking about that, right? So, anyways, I'm back. Um, for everybody that was on yesterday, sorry, I've been messing with my mics. For everyone that was on yesterday, I try not to include politics or religion in my show because I know that there can be varying degrees of both on both of it, on all of it. But I want to thank you for indulging me because I really wanted to talk about the Pope yesterday and the legacy he's really left behind, and it's just it's just amazing. It's amazing um, what he did in such a short amount of time. So again, thank you for indulging me today. We don't just have the little book; we have the big one. Yes, that is right. I needed a lot more space than I thought I did. Good morning, Muddy. Um, so today I want to talk about. Okay, so the subject I want to talk about today. If you're watching this later and you're a guy, please stay on because this is good stuff for anybody to know. Okay, this is good stuff for anybody to know. Excuse me. And I think it's important. I think it's important because I'm going to share some stuff. I don't remember the stats on it, but I do remember reading it, and that's enough for me. So, because I mean, this is an opinion based show. All right. Yes, I spew some facts at you that I get off of the off online because I do my own research, but most of this is just kind of flying by the seat of my pants and flying off the cuff, right? Just to talk about things that we don't normally talk about. And today that subject is menopause. I know. So menopause, it can be a rough time for women and men. Okay, women are like, well, how do men suffer? No, we may go through all the work and all the stuff, but it involves hormones. I mean, have you ever had PMS and then you turn around and you just lash out at somebody? Which I get it when I said last week that I hate it when people ask me if I'm PMSing, but sometimes it makes sense, right? But it's like you're always asking me that. Follow the timeline. I don't have my period every day of the month. Sometimes you're just annoying. But I'm just kidding. Some days we just have bad days, and that's going to happen. But menopause apparently is an egg of its own. Okay, it's an egg of its own. And I don't really know how to talk about it because I haven't gone through it yet. But I am going to read you some stuff that I wrote, and then I'm going to share some opinions, okay? So, the average age of menopause is 51, but I will share in here later that I read something else that said most women will menopause between 45 and 55. So just please bear with me on my notes here, and then we'll get into it. So it says the average age of menopause is 51. Menopause occurs when you have not had a period for 12 consecutive months. The global population of postmenopausal women is growing, and women are living longer. So I'm not even sure what that means. I mean, let's revisit that one later because it's like, what do you mean they're living longer? But anyways, I mean, I think I get what they mean. Women are living longer than they did back in the old days, right? Because they weren't having babies, up until death. In some cases, literally death. So, because I mean, they didn't have contraceptives back then, and people get the urge, or and they just do it, and then poof, here comes along, child number 18. So, it's and that can really wreck a woman's body, and it I knew a woman who had given birth to like 12 or 13 kids, and she's just like, my uterus, my doctor is literally saying I can't be pregnant anymore because my uterus is going to fall out. But her husband was very, very religious. And he was just like, no, we can't use contraceptives because it's against God's laws and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, it was literally killing her. And so, I mean, I think she was fine. I think the doctor just made that choice, and, it's just kind of like, well, we'll deal with the consequences later because it's like, I mean, it's not that it's a lot of kids. It's just for some women's bodies, it's a lot. And I mean, hey, more power to you if you want like 1,000 kids. But just remember that, if you're the man wanting that, you gotta listen to your body, your wife's body, because her body's going to tell you when she's had enough. So, here's some more notes. This is from the World Health Organization, who I trust. If you get it, you get it. If you know, you know. Menopause is one point in the continuum of life stages for women and marks the end of their reproductive years. Now, here's something interesting. So, Sammy said she was 48. Okay, my mom was 42, and I believe my grandmother was 42. I mean, I say 42. I'm just kind of pulling that number out, but I'm trying to remember because I remember my mom had a thyroid issue around the same time that she was menopausing. Boy, my teen years were, and I think I was around 16 around that time. So I'm trying to think of how old my mom would have been, yeah, my mom would have been 41 or 42 when she menopaused. So, and apparently women in my family, with the exception of me, menopause early. So, I've already gathered from the universe that I was never meant to be a mom. So thanks for that. But, I'm just kidding. Is, life happens and sometimes we don't always get what we want. But, that being said, yeah, hello. Anyways, I'll get to that in a second. But most women experience menopause between 45 and 55 as a natural part of biological aging. Menopause can also be a consequence of a surgical or medical procedure. So, like a hysterectomy or other things, that can just throw you into menopause because that literally is the end of your reproductive years. Now, here's the thing. I was reading about this, and it's going to get a little confusing because they're going to talk about perimenopause, but this is my understanding of perimenopause. Um, Perimenopause is, yeah, and Sammy just said it, and it goes on for years. So I'm going to get to that in a second. Apparently, menopause is when all the symptoms have stopped. You stop reproducing, you stop having the hot flashes, you stop having all this stuff. But we've always grown up to know it as menopause, but apparently that's perimenopause. Okay, so let's see. The menopausal transition can be gradual, usually beginning with changes in the menstrual cycle. Perimenopause refers to the period from when these signs are first observed and ends 1 year after the final menstrual cycle. So perimenopause can last several years and can affect emotional, mental, and social well-being. Uh, so my question was, so menopause is when we cycle into no more PMS and whatnot. I don't know. It confused the hell out of me because perimenopause and menopause are apparently siblings and they don't make any sense to me at all. But some people just go through it like that. Other people just, it does last for years. And apparently the perimenopause is what lasts for years. Now, perimenopause, from something else I read, can be a ton of different things, right? It can be like, apparently I thought, well, I'll get to that in a second. Anyways, yeah, well, I'll get to that in a second. Let me finish my facts. So symptoms can be hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, and weight gain. Communication. Oh, but what don't we talk about? Okay, so I'm going to get to that last. In fact, I'm going to use my little glitter pen to remind me. There we go. Because I want to talk about all that stuff. I mean, I don't mean last, like that'll be the last things we cover. I want to talk about that because that's where I think men and women sometimes struggle with one another. I think that's where sometimes they just kind of fall apart. I read an article that said many women that file for divorce actually file for divorce during menopause. And I was like, wow, that kind of sucks. And it's like, is it because of menopause, or is it just because they stopped giving a shit, or is it just because their hormones are going crazy, or as it says here, it can affect your emotional, mental, and social well-being? I don't know. But what I do know is that that's sad. I mean, how else do you put it? That's just sad. But yeah. So this month I was in I was in perimenopausal stage for 4 days. I know. I told sibling, I said, well, I enjoyed menopause for 4 days, and this is before I wrote all this down, but it's kind of also what prompted this because, like I said, I'm 52 years old. The chances of me having kids are probably never going to happen. And I'm not even sure that I'd want one of my own at this age for several reasons. One, by the time my kid graduates from high school, I'll be in my 70s. Okay. Now, if other people choose this, that's their thing. And I have no judgment on that. But, I'm not sure that that's fair to them. I grew up an only child. I had to adopt my siblings. I had to find best friends to be siblings with. But also, to be perfectly honest and to really kind of drive the point home, even though my heart is in great shape, I'm not sure my heart could handle that, because it is a repaired heart. And I do have, a reconstructive valve that one day will need to be replaced. So I think the whole thing really is this. Um, I'm not sure I was ever meant to be a mom, because honestly, I'm not sure my heart would have ever been able to handle it. And I didn't think about that when I got older. I had the opportunity once, and that's a story for another day, because that was a very traumatic time for me. But yeah, but menopause can be a very sensitive time, especially for women who didn't have kids. And people can sit there and say, "Well, it just wasn't meant to be." And don't try to make it better. I'm going to tell you that right now. Don't try to make it better. Just sit with the person, hold space for them. Just, because it's hard enough to go through. But what really kind of prompted me wanting to talk about this was not just the fact that we don't talk about some of the big subjects, right? We don't talk about the taboo things like, masturbation. We don't talk about, getting older and having to satisfy your own needs. We don't talk about menopause. We don't talk about periods. We don't talk about, all this stuff. We don't talk about sex. We don't talk about anything, because we're, I don't know why we don't. And I want to change that. I want to change. Oh, yeah. I'm sitting here like, ooh, putting myself on the front lines there. But, uh, but today we're doing menopause, because there's a lot that goes into it when it comes to being in a relationship. Now, I'm not in a relationship, and I'm not sure when I'm going to menopause, but apparently I still have until I'm 55 to do it. So, but I'll be honest with you, even though I'm still getting my periods, I think I might be perimenopausal, because my periods are different now. I mean, I was always a regular my entire life, and in my 40s I became regular, and that was the weirdest thing, for no other reason. I mean, I had an IUD for a while to control my periods, because they were so bad when I would get them. So I think that might have set my clock straight. They put the pin in there and poof, the clock works. But now they're getting shorter, and they're just different. I'm not trying to be gross or anything, but uh yeah, see, thank you, Sammy. It is past the time to put things like this on the front line. It really is. I mean, it really is. We live in a different day and age, and I know I'm putting a lot of myself out there, including some of the subjects that we will talk about, but I just I don't want people to be ashamed of this stuff. I don't want people's needs to go you know, touched, for lack of a better word, because there's shame, or there's fear of this or fear of that, or what if it, I mean, seriously. um I just, there's things that I think we need to talk about that we just don't talk about. And there's subjects, out there that we talk about. One of the things I'm going to talk about eventually is, why we all freak out if we see a man naked on TV, but we don't freak out if we see a woman on TV, right? That's a future conversation, because it's like, really? So, like, we giggle, right? Like, oh my God. But anyways, but yeah, that was inspired by an article I read, and I was like, good for you. It's like, it's one of my favorite actors, and they're just talking about, I guess I haven't seen the White Lotus, but they're in the White Lotus, and I was kind of like, oh, okay. So, but let's see. Things that are facts of life should be nothing to be ashamed of or shamed for. Yeah, I agree. Um, that includes, self gratification. So, anyways, another story, another day. Let's get back to menopause. So, yeah, so, I mean, it's not easy for me to put myself out there, okay? And sometimes I think it's going to hinder me in some way down the road. But also, hey, let's all tap into the old memory of Dr. Ruth Westheimer, right? She was huge in the 80s for just being right out there about sex. Okay, and it's, I'm not trying to emulate her. I'm not trying to tap into her vibe. I was thinking, wow, this is, she was talking about this stuff at a time that you didn't talk about it. And it's just we're in the 21st century, okay? There are things out there that exist that help us. So some women, okay, so I have a lot of friends who have been in menopause. Now, here's the fun fact about Shelly Marie. I tend to find a lot of friends that are older than me. I don't know why, it just happens. Okay. They're just, and maybe it's looking for that older sister vibe or whatever. But I do have a lot of friends that are within like 10, well, actually 8 to 15 years older than me that are very, very close friends of mine. And one of them, when she started menopausing, she's all like, will you go with me to this store? Because, like we used to carpool. She's all, do you mind if I stop here? Because I got to get this. And she got this stuff called black cohosh, which I think is Kohash. Okay. I don't know if it works for women on menopause, but it certainly worked for her. You can check with your doctor to find other stuff and see if that works. But even though I complain about still having my period, even my cousin the other day, she's like, oh, when I told her, I said, nope, no menopause yet. It happened. And she's like, oh man, I'm so sorry. And it's like, well, you know what? I said, I've made peace with it. I've made peace with it. But here's the funny thing. I didn't make peace with it right away. I made peace with it after I thought I was menopausing. And all of a sudden I felt my entire reproductive life flash before my eyes. Suddenly, for some reason, and I don't know if it's because I was PMSing or what, but I was sad. I was sad at the fact that I never will have that chance to be a mom, and I don't know what it was for me, I mean, I don't know. When I was younger and there was an opportunity, I was really kind of talked out of it. And I shamed myself and blamed myself for a long time for that. But as I got older and I kept hoping and wishing and hoping and wishing, and then it never happened. And then you get to the point where it's just kind of like it's never going to happen. And then you have people going, well, never say never. You're still getting your period. And I'm just like, let's be the voice of reason here. Okay. Because, even baby sibling and I were talking about it because she's all like, well, you never know. And I'm like, dude, it's like, I have a heart to worry about. It's like, if I ever get into a relationship, I'd like to be alive for it, you know? I'd like to be alive. I mean, that doesn't say we can't adopt somebody, if it really becomes a point. But for me, it's not a thing anymore. It's not a big deal anymore. I'm happy being an aunt. I love being an aunt. I don't get to see my nieces and nephews all the time, but when I do, there's just something very gratifying about when they come out, Auntie Shelly, and it's just, and they seem excited to see you, and you're not sure why because you haven't seen them in a while, but they're just kind of like, hi, so it warms your heart. It brings that thing. And that's where I had to settle. But for some reason, during those 4 days that I thought I was menopausing, or I thought I'd entered menopause, it just kind of, it blindsided me. And the weird thing is as I talk about it, you can see where I'm sitting here saying, well, I had made peace with it. I guess I hadn't, but I think I have now. I think I really have now. I did want my own kids. I did want to have that family, that nuclear family, right? The husband, the kids, the dog, the cat. Well, at the time when I was growing up, wasn't really a big cat fan until I had my own. But, I'm also happy being a fur mom. I like being a fur mom. They're sassy. They're a pain in the ass, like any kid can be, I mean, hey, let's just be honest, all right? If anybody's sitting there going, how can you call them that? It's like, if you have not called your kid a pain in the ass at least once in your life, there's something not right. All right. Because kids will push you and they will test you and they will push you over the edge while still testing you. All right. Because that's what they do. That's how they grow. That's how they learn. They push the edges to see what they can and can't do, what's right and wrong. That's how they figure out right and wrong, right? That's what we all did growing up. I'm sure my parents thought I was a pain in the ass all the time. And I mean, I was a good kid. I mean, and I say that because I was boring. I was like really boring. But but anyways, that being said, there are some key things I wanted to talk about that I don't think really get talked about during menopause. Because see, we talk about menopause, we talk about women going through that stage of life, we talk about us panicking because maybe we hadn't had the family yet that we wanted, and it's getting, we're getting older and older and nothing's happening. And sorry, I can't tell if we're having an earthquake or not. I don't think so. I hear the noises, but I don't feel the shaking. So, anyways, sorry about that. Anyways, but sorry, that made me lose my. Oh, I think it's my neighbor's dog downstairs. Um, oh no, we have roofers. I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to lose my focus here, but I forgot the roofers were coming, so they're making a lot of noise up there. Oh my god, that scared me. So, whew, let me get myself back. Earthquakes don't scare me. They should, but I've learned over the course of my life that I always have to be the one in the room that can't get scared because everybody else does. So, I try to keep my cool, but I also try to, but also when I was an office manager, I was the point of contact for emergency drills. So, you have to be the one that just stays focused. So, anyways, there's stuff we don't talk about that we should talk about. Um, like I said, when it comes to women who know they're menopausing, a lot of women are just like, oh God, but we don't talk about the women who didn't have kids, who wanted kids, who felt like they lost out on that opportunity, and that can be devastating for them. It can be painful. It can be heartbreaking. I mean, I speak from experience. I'm pretty clear that I was never meant to be a mom of my own children in this lifetime. But trying to wrap my head around that was very hard and very difficult because, I think when we're growing up, we're filled with this notion that that's our duty, that's our job. And we don't feel fulfilled when that doesn't happen. And we feel like we've let the world down in some weird subconscious way. Plus, you're always having the aunties and and the elderly women in your family going, "Oh, you poor thing, you never had kids, you missed on such a delight and joy, and oh, it's so sad you didn't find someone." It's like you have to deal with all their pity, which doesn't help because most of the time you're doing okay until all of a sudden they're throwing you a pity party, and you just kind of like, then sometimes you either rise above it and just kind of go to the bathroom and roll your eyes 50 times, or you just sit there and you fall into it and sink into it. Now, I'm grateful that that hasn't happened. I think my family gave up asking me if I was ever going to find someone and have a family when I was in my early 40s. What can I say? And I think I don't remember if I said anything or if they said anything. But then when a woman hits menopause, there's a lot of feelings. There's a lot of feelings, not just because your hormones are going awry, okay? Because women and men change every so many years. We just probably don't notice it because it probably, it just mixes in with life, right? But it's like, I always called it different stages of puberty. It's like adult puberty. It's like you're just kind of going through these different things and your body changes. And I mean, even when women get pregnant, right? All the hormones and their bodies change. And, men change over time, and it's the natural course of life. So one of the things that people might have a problem with is that, there is the hot flashes, which, they're the night sweats, the vaginal dryness. There's a cure for that. It's called KY jelly. All right. So I'm just telling people that I've never had to use it, but I used to work in a pharmacy. So you know the know. When you know the inside scoop, you know the inside scoop. And weight gain. Now, the weight gain can be the hardest part for women, especially if you've been fit all your life. You can't understand, why is this happening to me? And it's just kind of like, it's like you're the new version of the freshman 15, right? But yeah, I think if you're that person that felt like me, and even though I'm still getting my period, that you're just kind of not sure about how to feel about it, just move through the emotions, feel them, don't ignore them. I mean, this is your life you're talking about. This is a part of you that never came to fruition. This is a part of you that you may have wanted, that you may have indulged your fantasies in having, and it didn't happen. And so you might just feel like you were left on the side of the road. I've known some women who menopause that really wanted children, had the whole life plan. They even got married once, but it didn't work out. and it didn't, either in marriage or whatnot, not every woman can have a child. So that brings me to another thing when we talk about it, right? I was going to talk about this separately, but no, maybe I will. Maybe I will, because there's a lot of women subjects I want to cover about how people treat other people differently depending on the situation, and how it really kind of feels unfair in a lot of ways. But let's get to some of the talking points I wanted to talk about. Communication between partners, you know, um, I think that says everything. Communication between partners. Okay. We have to talk about these things. When I said earlier that I read an article about women that tend to file for divorce after or during menopause, I'm not sure if it's because their emotions are out of whack. They're finally just maybe seeing that they're in a non supportive relationship, or they're just feeling so awful about themselves that they just don't feel like they're good enough for anybody. So Sammy says the weight gain sucks, and one symptom I didn't know about beforehand was hair loss. My hair is half as thick as it was before menopause, and that part probably happened 10 years after I started menopause. And also that doesn't help, right? Because as we get older, we do tend to lose hair, and our hair does get thinner. So wow. Okay. I have a lot of wispies because I had my thyroid went my thyroid decided to be awkward for a while, and instead of having a hypothyroid problem, I had a hyperthyroid problem, and so I started losing some of my hair, and now it's like I have all these wispies because my hair is growing back. And older sibling talked me out of getting a pixie again. I love my little pixies when I get my pixie haircuts. Yeah, she talked me out of it. She's like, "No, your hair is getting so long," and it's like, and she said the magic words. You know what it's like when it gets to that one stage. Oh my God, there's that one stage where you just can't do anything with it, and you just have to ride it out for like 2 months, and you just want to shave your head, but but when you're PMSing. But that being said, so yeah, the weight gain and the hair loss. All things we have to contend with, right? And I mean, men go through hair loss. Some. I mean, my dad's lucky; he's got a great head of hair still. I mean, it's thinned out, but he still has a lot of his hair. But but yeah. Oh, thank you, Sammy. Sammy likes my pixies too. So see, sibling. But anyways, we I think couples need to have better communication with one another. And that includes you women, and I say you women because a lot of times, I think a lot of times we just expect people to know, right? I mean, sometimes men are like, well, don't you know what I'm thinking? And but then they get mad at us, and we're all like, well, don't you know what I'm thinking? That's called communication, guys. You got to have communication in this. um my parents had, I don't, now see, I don't know how great my parents' communication was when my mom menopause, but I'm pretty sure it was pretty good because they both knew and nobody told me. So because my mom was also going through a thyroid thing, and she was going through some treatment for her thyroid, which runs in my family line of my mom, grandma, maybe my great grandma, I don't know. But I remember one day my mom just, I was putting away the dishes because that was my morning routine, my morning chore, putting away the dishes in the dishwasher. And my mom was like, "Oh, you don't have to do that right now." And I was like, "Okay," and I'm thinking, "Okay, I'll just do it when I get home from school." And then I went to my room, and all of a sudden I'm getting yelled at like 5 minutes later. And it's just, and well, why aren't the dishes put away? I told you to put the dishes away. And it's just like, and I was so confused. And so then I'm standing in the kitchen, we're both arguing, and I'm like, "You just told me I didn't have to do this. Did not say that." "Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You said I did not have to do this." And my dad comes out, and he's like, "Well, did you tell her?" And I'm all, "Tell me what?" And so, of course, the first thing, the way they said it is, I'm like, "Oh my God, is she dying?" But no, turns out she was in menopause. And then I think the thyroid thing happened right after that, like just within the same year. But she's like, "No." My dad's all, "Yeah, just tell her." It's like, oh. And of course, when you hear menopause, the first thing I did is I just start putting the dishes away because it's like, you hear all these scary stories about women in menopause. But yeah, I mean, that was just one example. But, but my dad's like, well, did you tell her? He's all, you can't yell at her if you haven't told her. She doesn't know what's going on. So, my parents seem to have some pretty decent communication because it is a change of life, right? And when you have an active, when you're sexually active with your partner, oh, see, Sammy says my mom would burst into tears for literally no reason when she went through menopause. I swear I think that's going to be me. I burst into tears for no reason anyway. But there's nothing like a good soul cry. But yeah, I mean, I my mom may have, but my mom kept a lot of things very close to the chest. She didn't talk about a lot of things, including with me, which would have been helpful to help me navigate, womanhood, right? To help me navigate all this stuff. And so now it's just kind of figuring it out on my own and figuring it out with my friends who are older. And here comes the gardener. Excuse me. There we go. So, anyways, there's a lot happening. The gardeners, the roofers. Oh, but anyways, so I think communication with partners is good. Women, don't be afraid to tell your men or your partner, however you identify, that you're going through menopause. Let them help you through it, or just say, look, this is what I'm going through. I could really use support from you. I could really use, your, well, basically your support. I could use your compassion, your empathy. I mean, don't, you know, um, take advantage of it, but ask them, be honest with them. Say, look, this is what I'm going to go through. And I just want you to know that I'm not sure how I'm going to react. Because, like I said, older sibling has CRPS, as I mentioned before in an earlier show last week. And so she didn't even know she went through menopause. I mean, her periods were always irregular anyway. So she's all like, yeah, I didn't even know I menopaused until I menopaused. And and as Sammy says, understanding is what we need, and that's true. Okay, so if whether you're in a relationship or if you're just talking with your friends, okay, be honest with your people, because if you're honest with your people and you just kind of whoosh into Dr. Jekyll, no, Mr. Hyde, then you're kind of like, or Miss Hyde in this case, then they're going to be like, it's okay, it's okay, because we don't know how people are going to handle menopause. So my next thing, compassion and empathy. There you go. There's the understanding right there. Compassion and empathy. Show some compassion and empathy. All right. But ladies, I'm also telling you this to show it to your partner, because, we all know what PMS is like. I think 12 months of PMS is just, about mind blowing for a lot of people. And I mean consistent PMS. So, so like I said, some women will menopause and it won't affect them at all. They'll have the hot flashes, the night sweats, and then poof, it's done. Other women, it can last for years. Other women, it can just be like, oh, it could just be their pal for a while. So, let's show some compassion. Excuse me, I don't know what is happening. What did I drink this morning? Oh, my water. But I know, who knew water could do that. But anyways, compassion and empathy. And compassion and empathy and understanding, again, amongst partners is a very good thing to have. Oh, Sammy, this is so funny. My very last thing, understanding. See, her and I, same wavelength. Understanding. And in parentheses, I put difficult road for some, especially if wanting to be a mom. Yeah, it can be a difficult road for many. So don't sit there and go, oh, well, it just wasn't meant to be. Someone who always wanted kids, who never had kids, doesn't want to hear that. Okay, they don't want to hear, well, it just wasn't meant to be. No kidding. I want to say, no shit. No shit. Seriously, we know it wasn't meant to be because it didn't happen. But, and women that have that, they can also feel very unloved or unlovable. I mean, I go through my moments. Being single is not easy. Being eternally single, it feels like, is definitely not easy. I've been single for a long time, and there are times where I feel unlovable, and then I think, well, maybe I should get back in the dating pool, and then I kind of freak myself out because it's like, I haven't done that in so long. How do I do that? What if I mess it up? And I think when you're at a certain age, people just expect you to know how to handle these things, to not be all intimidated. Oh, that would make a good show, wouldn't it? I should do that. Um, Navigating singlehood, right? Let's do that. Navigating singlehood. Yeah, we're gonna make that a show. Yeah. So Sammy says it just wasn't meant to be as so insensitive. And it is. Now, here's the thing. If you've been one of these people who have said that, it's insensitive, yes, but it's unintentionally most times insensitive. It's unintentionally insensitive. It's just don't say anything at all. Okay? Don't say anything at all. That's like, and I hate to say this because I know a lot of people say it just to make people feel better. But one of the things I hated the most when my mother died was she's in a better place. It's like, no, her place was here with me and my dad. Oh, yeah, Sammy's thing. Just like, why aren't you married? It's like, no shit. It's like, because I can't find a man or a partner. Sorry. I mean, however, like I said, however you identify. For me, I'm just talking from my point of view. Um, because Mr. Wright, his map got lost. I don't know, but like I said, I got lucky because my family stopped asking that after a while, and it wasn't really my direct family, right? It was those big family gatherings with people that don't see you for a while, and they sit there and go, well, how come you're not married? Your biological clock is only going to tick for so long. And it's just like, I'm sorry. Do Just because I'm a woman, do I look like that's my only purpose in life? No, it's not. My purpose in life, turns out, was that I'm still single and hopefully not forever. I would like to grow old and die with somebody. Well, not die with them, but I'd like to be in something before I die. And but yes, I would have liked to have had kids. It did not happen. But maybe my purpose here is to help people through that, to talk about it, to talk about these things that hurt us, that maybe we can make that part of a show, Sammy, like just all the things, like what people expected of women and all the insensitive things that we talked about, um like, why aren't you married? Why didn't you have kids? Are you not looking? My favorite, are you gay? I'm an ally of the LGBT community. I'm a straight ally of the LGBT community. And the funny thing is that it's like, really? So because I don't have a boyfriend, you just automatically assume that because I hang out with my best friends, that one of them is my girlfriend. I would tell you. I mean, it might have been hard because my mom could be a little judgy about that, but I'm sure eventually it would have been fine. But yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know how I would have acted back then. But I did have someone think that Sissy Joe was my girlfriend, and she was not. She was my soul sister. But she was also my best friend. And, it was just because, older sibling didn't always, come down and visit when Sissy Joe would. She just wanted to get away. Older siblings, like, she would be hurting, or we had cats, right? So someone had to mind, someone had to man the fort. So, so Sissy Joe would come with me a lot of times. And it was kind of funny because everyone at the table was just looking at my cousin like, what? Where did that come from? And they all kind of laughed. And I felt bad because, I had that going on for a while. I just raked him over the coals for a while for that one. But even my other cousin, who was gay, was like, do you play, which team do you play for? Do you play for our team? It's like, no, sweetheart, I'm an ally, but no. Um, let's see. I've turned down dates with totally unacceptable men for me, and then they assumed I was gay because I wasn't interested in them personally. That's narcissism. Wow. Wow. I've had that too. Where people are all like, oh, do you just not like men? It's like, no, I like men. It's just, there's a sense of decorum when you're first trying to get to know somebody, I think. I mean, look, here's the thing. I'm going to be honest about this right now, and it's kind of going off in a different direction. Another sidebar during the menopause talk. Um, I've talked about this before, and since Sammy just brought it up, one of the things that drives me nuts, and maybe it's just me, I'm not a prude. I will sit here and talk to you about sex and all this stuff. I will talk about, all the things that we can do for self gratification, how we can take care of ourselves, navigating singlehood. But one of the things that drives me nuts is that when I first started to get to know somebody, or somebody was interested, it was like they immediately go from, not, well, what kind of things do you like to do? What are you interested in? it quickly, just like that, becomes very sexual. And at the time, I wasn't comfortable with that because I hadn't done a lot of my shadow work, and I was really trying to move away from being objectified because I spent my childhood and my pretty much my early dating life feeling that way. First by my abuser, who fortunately was gone by the time I hit my teens, but also, just by the men I dated early on. I mean, there were just things they would say to me, and I think it kind of turned me off. I mean, it's not that you don't want to have a relationship and be physical or intimate with someone. It's just I think you get to a point where it's just that's your opening line, the things you'd like to do to me. I mean, I'm sorry, do you think that that is impressive to me? Because it's not. I mean, it's demeaning. I mean, I think you can look at it as flattering, and maybe I did later because it's like, wow, someone looks at me that way. But it's like that's not the first thing you want to hear out of somebody's mouth, because what it says to me is you're not interested in anything more than just getting in my pants. And I don't roll that way. I rolled that way literally once, and it was not my thing. Not my thing. So, and like I said, I mean, you can call me a prude, whatever. I don't care. I'm not a prude. I'm just at this point though, intimacy kind of scares me a little bit because I've been single for so long. It's like, you put all this pressure on yourself, right? Maybe we'll talk about that too. Let's talk about that too. That'll be part of navigating singlehood, sex and navigating singlehood. There you go. You guys are giving me a lot of good ideas. I say you guys, but it's like Sammy and I talking, but it's like I keep thinking, what would they want to hear? So so Sammy says, I like men, just not you, LOL. Yeah, kind of. Or so she says she couldn't agree more with everything that I'm saying right now. And it's true. And ladies, that goes for you too. I mean, it's not just a guy thing. That's a people thing. Men don't want to know that, oh, yeah, I'd like to climb you like a tree. Yeah, say that to your girlfriends. Don't say that right to his face, okay? Because, he save that for the second date. save it for the I've gotten to know you stage now. Wow. I mean, come on. Just, I'm not old fashioned in that respect. But I do think there's that word, respect, a level of respect that we need to show one another when you're trying to get to know somebody. Now, if you're just out, at the meat market, and I mean, literally the bar called the meat market, and you're just looking for a one night thing, and you both meet each other and you just want a one night thing, then hey, more power to you. That's your thing. But if you are the person that is out there looking because you're interested and you find this person interesting and you want to just get to know them better and see where it goes, I'm pretty sure that 9 times out of 10 opening up with something like I want to climb you like a tree, or boy, the things I could do to you, is not the way to go. It is not. And that is, like I said, a two-way street. Okay, no matter no matter how you identify gender wise, that is not a good thing. If it is, I mean, well, I don't know, maybe it works for some people. Maybe I am just showing my age. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. I guess I can't really speak to that. But as far as I go, no. No. Get to know me first, all right? Then tell me you want to, well, I'm not that tall, so you can't really climb me like a tree unless you're a hobbit. But, I even had a dream last night where I was trying to reach something, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm seriously like that. I'm like, I'm short. I'm not that tall. So even my dreams are reminding me I'm short. But actually, I'm pretty average. I'm average size, but still short. And and I have to tell you guys, just as a sidebar, it's been funny living in my dad's house for the last 3.5 months, because my mom was shorter than I was. My mom was 5'2.5", but she passed away about 10.5 years ago. And everything in this house now is high. It's like, I was making spaghetti last night, and I was reaching for the garlic, and it's on the top shelf, and I'm just like tippy toeing with my long fingers, and I'm like, oh my God. So Sammy says we must both be showing our age, whatever. It's how it is for me too. That's true. I'm not even sure if it's showing our age or just how we were raised to be respectful. I know that my cousins are raising, okay, so my nieces and nephews are actually my second cousins, but my they're being raised to be respectful. So I mean, I think it's just a matter of, and to be honest with you, sometimes now that I think about it, and I think back to some of these people that were just kind of, the way they hit on me was like, wow, and maybe they were just nervous and they didn't know what to say. So, I mean, if you're interested in somebody says something wild and out off the cuff to you, just just you know give them a chance, give them a second, okay, because maybe they just didn't know what to say. Maybe they just, I clam up around men, which could also be why I've been eternally single. Especially very attractive men that I find attractive, I find it very hard to talk to them. And it has nothing to do with status, it has nothing to do with anything, who they are, where they are, what they are. It's just a matter of, I just never know what to say. It's kind of like, I'm kind of like, if you ever watch Big Bang Theory, like the early days of Raj, right? Rajesh Kutrapali, who just, every time he was around a girl, it's like a girl would walk in the room, it's like, whoop. No, I'm not that bad. I mean, I can talk to men and I can talk to people in a room, but when I find that I'm interested in them, I do have a hard time talking to them. So I always feel like I need a wingman for that one, because it's kind of like they keep me talking. So Sammy says, on the other hand, maybe all they wanted was someone to hop in the sack with. In that case, I guess the direct approach is best. Then they can just move on. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. If you're there just for, one night stand, hey, talk to each other however you want. That's your thing. But like I said, if you're on the prowl for someone to maybe have a relationship with, or you want to meet somebody, you want to meet that person, or maybe you want to meet that person that could be that person, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Um, think about your approach. Like I said, if you're going to the bar that everybody calls the meat market, right? Then you're going to get what you're going to get. You're going to expect the unexpected. But if you are you know online dating or something, where you're actively trying to find someone to date with, telling them, wow, blah blah blah, that may not be the best approach. Just shows up some decorum. That's all I'm saying. See, Sammy says the same. I get shy around someone I'm actually interested. I do too, which is kind of funny, because there have been times when my friends are like, but you were talking to that hot guy, and it's like, but I wasn't interested. Maybe he's hot to you, but yeah, I mean, yeah, he's an attractive man, but no, just, the vibe wasn't there. But yeah, so, I mean, I think it's fair to say that I complained about being single for a gazillion years, but part of it is my fault. So, and I do accept my responsibility in that 100%. But anyways, let's get back to menopause and finish this up. So, I, to be honest with you, this is what the perspective is about. We start one place, we go somewhere else, we come back and tie it up at the end. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was, we talked about communication between partners, compassion and empathy between partners, understanding between partners, and with people outside of that partnership who just, who say the insensitive things, like maybe it just wasn't meant to be, or maybe you weren't meant to be a mom, or whatever they're going to say. And this one, trust. Trust. So, ladies, if you're menopausing and you have a spectacular partner, you need to trust them. You need to open up, communicate with them, and tell them, look, this is what I'm going through. I don't know how it's going to end, but I know how it's beginning. And, and I'm feeling kind of this way. I'm feeling kind of that way. One of the things that it says, menopause can last several years and can affect emotional, mental, and social well-being. You may not feel as social, and you have to communicate this to people. Yeah, I'm menopausing. I'm just really kind of out of my mind right now. Um, we need to stop with the stigmatizing all these different things. We need to stop stigmatizing when we have our period. We need to stop stigmatizing when we are going through menopause or perimenopause. You know, it's not easy for me to talk about all these things. It's not easy for me to just open up and communicate about it because I mean, it really is, you know, putting myself literally out there on the front line. Sammy too, because Sammy's being very open, but you can't see Sammy. You can see me. So, I think, so I just want you to know that the reason I'm sharing all these things is because I'm in this stage in my life where I'm just tired of having to hide behind words. I was watching a video this morning and someone's like, yeah, and I wasn't feeling out my Beth because it was that time of the month. It's like, fuck, you're on your period, okay? And you have your period. That's a natural occurrence of women. It's going to happen. Without a period, none of us are here. Okay? I couldn't have been born without my mom having a period. Mm, you know, and I'll say it, my father having a sperm count. Now that would have driven both of my parents nuts if I would have said that right in front of them. But I'm all about shock factor. I love telling people, yeah, I'm the fruit of his looms. My dad's all, I hate when you do that. And it's like, why? It's funny. It may not be funny to him. So I kind of stopped that because I did feel bad because it just, it didn't go over well too often. But I thought it was funny. But no, we got to destigmatize all these things because when we destigmatize these, just the word itself, menopause, I just literally underlined it in my book. Why are we so afraid of it? Why are we so afraid of talking about it? I mean, it's a natural occurrence in a woman's life. It's a natural part of the female body to go through menopause, and whether it's surgically induced or whether you're going through it as a woman, your body changes. You reach puberty and you got your period and you're like, yeah, I got my period, because it's like it finally happened. You feel like you're a woman, right? And then and we talk about that, but then we never really talk about it in public. Just kind of like, I got my period. You tell your friends, but nobody in your family that's a guy knows, right? Well, unless, my dad's a girl dad, because obviously I'm the only child, but so not a problem. He would know. But yeah, but in most cases, we don't talk about it. It's just kind of like, oh, that thing. One thing I found very impressive is that my grandfather, my grandma was like, my cousin started her period. My grandma was like, Daddy, I need you to go to the store and get, some pads and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And so I went with my grandpa and he's like, do you want to go? I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? I hadn't started my period yet, but I was like, sure. But he didn't care. He was just like, okay, grandpa. So there you go. We have to trust that the people around us are going to be a good support group. If they're not, just tell them. If somebody says to you, oh, well, maybe it just wasn't meant to be to have babies, just say, you know what, I really don't need that right now because that hurts me more than you realize. And if they say you're being sensitive, just say, you know what, maybe I am, but it was something I really wanted and it didn't happen. And I don't need to be reminded of it right now. I mean, you can say it politely, you can say it nicely, or you can just say nothing at all and just say, well, I appreciate your thoughts, but, right now I just don't want to talk. Just as you can't always help what people are going to say, and like I said, I think most times it's coming from a good place, even though it feels insensitive and even though it hurts. I think they're trying in their own way to help you through something, and how we react to it depends on us. I mean, if you're in the throes of having a hormonal flush, just be like, if you don't mind, I just want to sit here in quiet, in silence, just kind of shut it down. But when it comes to all these other things, I really do believe in anything that you're going through, communication is key. We'll talk about sex another time. And here's another thing. Communication is key in that as well. A lot of people say, well, they don't satisfy me. They don't do this because they don't speak up. I mean, I haven't had sex with somebody else in the room for as long as I've been single. Okay. But going back over the relationships I had, I realized I never said anything. I was just quiet. It was just, well, they're with me, so I must be, they must still love me. They must still care about me. I was in a much different place, darker place back then. So, Sammy says it is coming from a good place, but that is why shows like this are important, so that maybe people will learn to think about their words before they speak them. Thank you. You're so sweet. I wish more people watched it. I do, because I think what we talk about here is, it's pretty important for people, right? People that don't understand. And I'm trying to give a perspective. I'm grateful that Sammy's been making time to come on to add to a lot of this stuff. But anyways, that's that. Okay. So I don't think there's more I can say on this. I probably said a lot already. The shows have been going on longer than I expected to, but I do tend to sidebar a lot lately. But yeah, so communication, compassion, understanding, and trust. Those are to me the biggest things in menopause that you will ever have. Okay, because those are the things that are going to help you and your support people get you through this. All the hormonal stuff, all the body stuff, that's up to you. You've got to do that yourself, and nobody else can do that for you. But when you have a good support system, when you have people you can talk to, when you can have people that will just hold space for you, even just in silence, that can make the difference in how your menopausal journey does go. All right. So I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back here tomorrow for Self Care Wednesday, and there will be no show on Thursday because Thursday is a travel day. Guys, I'm going home. I'm going home. So Friday, whole different background. Okay, a whole different background, a lot closer wall than this one. But yeah, I'm a little nervous about leaving my dad alone, but he's ready and he knows it, and it's time. So, and I miss my cat. I miss my cat. So, anyways, have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I'll see you back here tomorrow on Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Time, Facebook Live. All lives are public. Anybody can watch for Self Care Wednesday. And once more, Thursday, I will not be on. Sammy, thank you so much for coming on. I will see you Friday. Enjoy your time out with the besties tomorrow. And yeah, have a great day, everybody. Thank you for watching.